Today is March the 26th, 2014. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we're in Yukon, Oklahoma, to speak with Bill Burke. And this is in regards to our Oklahoma 100-Year Life project, so thank you for having us today. Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born February 16th, 1914, in Warrenton, Virginia.
And were you born at home or in the hospital or what?
I was told that it was in a hospital,
Okay.
according to my mother. And she overheard a friend say, "I wouldn't name a dog William Henry." Okay.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one sister, older, and I had one brother, younger, but they're both gone.
So you were in the middle.
I was in the middle.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My father was in the National Guard, and he had a sergeant's rating, and his living was, he was the police department in Warrenton. Get that, the police, he was it.
And how did he make his rounds? By horse?
On foot.
On foot? Not by horse? And talk a little bit about your elementary school. Where did you go and how many children were in your class, that type of thing?
Elementary, I went to 3 schools for my elementary years. We had been living on a farm in Virginia, and my mother arranged with a brother of hers who had come back from World War I, and he bought a house in Washington and took us in, along with a couple of other brothers and sisters. And I had a late start in school because I was already past beginning age for school when we moved into the city, where we could go to school. On the farm, we were 3 miles from town, and it'd be a little difficult to get there. And I was in a class in which there was another William Burke. The teacher had to use the middle names so we know who she's calling on. And then due to, they had me skip a half a grade because I was old, and that moved me to another school. Each one, of course, was in walking distance. And then after that, we moved from the northeast of Washington to the northwest, and so that meant a 3rd elementary school.
And then into high school?
Went to junior high, and still in walking distance, a little farther. And then from junior high, I went to McKinley Technical High School back in the Northeast. So this required riding a bus and a streetcar and walking at both ends.
Did you have a favorite subject in high school?
Yeah, anything electrical,
Okay.
mathematical.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1932.
And did you plan to go to college?
I couldn't plan for college. We didn't have anything, but I earned a scholarship to Bliss Electrical School, which was just outside of Washington. And I had a friend who wanted that same scholarship, but he didn't get it. But he lived back in southeast Washington, but he had a car. And he would come and pick me up and take me to school and back home every day.
But he couldn't go to class with you.
Oh yeah,
He went
we
with
were in
you?
class
He went
together. Yeah, but his father could afford for him to go.
Okay. Well, from that, when you finished that program, what did you do?
When I graduated from Bliss, IBM was looking for new service personnel, and they came and took 40% of our class, and I was one of those. And then IBM sent us to Endicott, New York for school and repairing machines. I went back to Washington for a few months working, and then back to Endicott for some more school. And then, much to my dislike, I was shipped to New York City. I didn't want to go, but go for 6 months. I was there for 17 years.
Did you learn to like it?
I got used to it, let's put it that way. And while there, I took an evening course in electronics at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And life has been learning as it went along.
Well, IBM, that was in the early days of IBM.
Yeah.
So you were on the cutting edge, so to speak.
I guess so.
Pretty exciting time.
This was long before electronics and computers. It was punched card accounting systems.
In the 1930s, in the Depression, were you in New York during? That would have been about the right time, wouldn't it? In the 30s,
that
you were
started
in New York.
in 1929, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
So it was after that then. Did you serve in the military any during that time?
No, I was. I volunteered for the Navy, and they told me one eye wasn't 20/20. If I could get lenses and come back, they would take me and give me a warrant officer rating. I delayed going. In fact, I didn't go back, but eventually, a long time after, I did get glasses. But when I was called for the draft, right away, that was 20/20 for them. See? So I was accepted, went through the medical, so on. And then IBM obtained a deferment for me both times.
Okay.
Somebody had to stay home and take care of those machines.
Well, where did you live in New York City?
At first, my friend and I, with whom I went to school, roomed together. And when he got married and left, I was by myself a little while. And then I got married and lived in Queens, New York. And then I had lived in New York, in Manhattan for a while by myself. But when I got married, we moved to New Jersey in, forget the name of the place.
That's what, in the late 40s and 50s, somewhere in. About what time period was that when you got married?
1945. And East Orange. That's East Orange. That's what it is. Yeah.
1945. That was during World War II. Right around in there.
And then, of course, I was still working in New York City. You had to walk to the railroad station, an hour on the train, and either take the ferry across and then walk, or take the Hudson Tubes and then walk. If the weather was good, and took the ferry.
Well, what prompted you to move out into the suburbs like that?
Well, it was hard to find any place in the city,
Okay.
at least that we could afford.
True.
So it was that, or nothing like it.
Well, how had you met your wife?
Oh, yes. When all the fellas were going into service, IBM began hiring girls to do service work. And I was at that time stationed at Metropolitan Life. In fact, there were 21 of us working in there. And she was put into MetLife too. So we met at work.
And then you moved to Orange. And how long did you stay in New York then?
I worked there 17 years, and then, we bought a house after a while in New Jersey.
Okay.
But after the approximately 17 years, I went from servicing machines into design work. So then we moved to Endicott. We built a house there.
So how long were you with IBM then, total?
38 years and 6 months or something.
So that's a pretty impressive record.
And the last 2 years, I moved back to Virginia and took early retirement because the incentive was too good to pass up. They wanted to get rid of the old people. And then while we were living in Virginia then, of course we bought a house there too. McCulloch Corporation, which was in various businesses such as chainsaws and helicopters and all kinds of things, was building Lake Havasu City in Arizona, offering free flights out to talk you into buying lots. So we signed up for that, and these flights went from Baltimore Airport. So we had to drive all the way around the city to get over there. It was snowing, and the plane flight originated in Boston, and it was supposed to go to Rochester, New York, and pick up people. If we got it, came on down almost to Baltimore, had to turn and go back to Rochester. So by the time we got off, we were quite late, and we couldn't go all the way to Arizona on account of fuel and food. So we had to stop at Midway in Chicago to refuel and get some food for us. Then we went on to Lake Havasu, bought a lot, and went back home, sold the house real quickly, and moved to Arizona. We had to rent a while till the house was built.
Quite a difference from those two places.
Yeah. And then my wife decided she didn't want an ordinary house anymore. Some man in California had developed means of heating and cooling the house, controlled by the sun. So with his help, we built a house with, 2 tons of water on the roof, something like that, and sliding insulating panels over them. In winter, you opened the panels in the daytime to heat the water from the sun and closed it at night to keep the heat in. In the summer, you reversed it to let the heat out at night and keep it out in the daytime.
Did it work pretty well?
It worked, yeah. Of course, it wasn't long until that water on the roof became kind of stagnant. So then it was, my wife decided it was time for us to find a continuing care, life care place. And so she consulted OOHRP and got a list of them. And we wanted to get somewhere near our two sons who were in Texas. And we stopped at Spanish Cove first, then I ran around into Texas and Arkansas. I think we even touched Missouri. And then we came back to Spanish Cove and signed up because this was the one for us. The others all had too much formality and not enough freedom. They would require you to sit at a certain table, and there was no noise in the dining room, for instance, and there was freedom and a lot of chatter and laughing here, which was good.
So when did you come here then?
We
Right.
came here in June 1994.
So do my math, 20 years?
20 years ago.
20 years in June, yeah.
Well, did your wife work along the way?
Yeah, she'd take care of the children,
Yeah. And pick out houses with new roofs, huh?
pick out houses, yeah. Actually, she worked in a jewelry store in Lake Havasu for a while because she had, while living in Arizona, taken up rock hounding and silversmithing and all that stuff. So she made a lot of silverware. I mean, bolas, and I've got a belt buckle which she made,
Oh.
silver, and
It'll come.
the name skips me right. Turquoise, the Indian combination.
Arizona, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now, are you still married today?
Yeah, my wife is over in assisted living now. She's been there a year and a half.
Is she 100 as well?
No, she's 91.
Well, you married a spring chicken then.
Yeah.
So what's the secret to a long, happy marriage?
Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
Well, did you ever imagine that you would live to be 100?
No, never thought about it.
Well, when you reached 99, you thought, oh, one more year?
Well, people kept reminding me, I couldn't forget that.
What did you do to celebrate?
We had 11 of our relatives come here on Saturday the 15th of February and put on a big party and celebration over in our Plaza Hall. And then after church on Sunday, had another party at church after the service, and then in the beginning of the service, the pastor had me up on the pulpit seated with him as he asked me questions, and I answered about my life activities and so on. So it was a big celebration for 2 days.
Well, did he ask you a question that kind of surprised you?
No, I think there were things I expected because it was about how things have changed and what you did and where were you, all those.
Well, what do you see as the biggest change that you've seen over those 100 years?
The changes are so great, it's hard to see. Certainly, all the modern electronics is a big thing.
Cell
Moves
phones.
so fast you can't catch up with it.
Well, did you travel?
We used to travel some, and while living in Arizona, we took advantage of a program that American Eastern Airlines, which no longer exists, you could go anywhere you wanted for 21 days. No matter where you went, you had to go through Atlanta. So in order to get to Washington State and Oregon, we had to go to Atlanta from Arizona. But we had a good time. In those days, flying was all right. No problems, except at one time a luggage wound up in Salt Lake City or Minneapolis or somewhere, and we wanted it in Arizona. But they got it back to us.
And people dressed like they were going to church when they traveled?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We went to church, they dressed like you go to church too.
True. That's true.
Not anymore.
Well, what were some family traditions growing up, like holidays? How did you celebrate holidays back in Virginia and Washington? Christmas, July 4th.
Oh, well, for early Christmas, when I was still a kid, we had a tree, but there were no electric lights in those days. We had gas lights. And we used to clip candles on the tree, but you wouldn't dare light them. But one Christmas, must have been my uncle, bought some electric lights and batteries to light the lights. And when it was time to do away with the tree, the batteries were still good, and somebody gave me a little electric motor. And I had more fun with that than anything. And that started me off to get into anything electrical. I fell in love with that. And I guess you mentioned a dream. A dream I did have was I would be an electrical engineer someday. I got halfway there. Not a full engineer.
Halfway's better than none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we always had a tree.
And what would be the meal? What would your mother fix for your Christmas day?
Turkey.
Do you remember your first car?
My first car was a worn out, rusted out Plymouth, and we were living in New Jersey then. But I did some patching up and some improvements on it. it served its purpose for a while. And I traded that in on a new Ford. That rusted out. And traded it in on a Rambler. And then I decided it was time to get another car. I got another Plymouth new and traded that in on a somewhat used Ford. And after that, I traded it in on a slightly used Plymouth. And that was the last one I had. And we gave up driving 6.5 years ago. And I have to depend on other people to take me now. Of course, Spanish Cove has a couple of cars. They'll take you to doctors and stores and anywhere in Yukon. The doctors, most of them will be in New York, Oklahoma City. You go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a good friend upstairs who's anxious to take me to the stores. She says, "Don't take the Cove cars, that you waste too much there sitting and waiting. I'll take you and bring you back." I do that most of the time. And I have a couple live nearby who take me to church most of the time. Once in a while they're away, so I find another way to go. So we make out quite well.
What church do you attend?
It's Bethel Baptist Church.
Baptist.
And growing up as a child, how important was religion and in your family?
Well, it was rated quite highly. We hadn't hadn't grown as much as we ought to at that time. It's only in the later years that I've been growing more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since you've moved around so much, if someone asks you where was home, where do you consider home
Where I am.
right now? I was trying to do the math in my head. So you were not in New York in 1964 for the World's Fair?
Yeah, we were in there for World's Fair. Let's see.
I think that was in
In
64.
fact, even though we lived right there, IBM put us up at a hotel to go to the fair because they brought people from all over the country. They stayed at the hotel, so we stayed at the hotel.
Had to work in the pavilion to answer questions and that sort of thing for IBM. Were you at the fair to work, or were you at the fair to enjoy
just
it?
to visit, just
Okay.
to go to the fair, yeah.
I'll make myself clearer. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories from the fair?
Nothing special, no.
Don't remember the Oklahoma Pavilion?
Nope.
It's supposed to be in the shape of the state. That's about all I know.
Oh,
And they gave out chicken, fried chicken.
Well, I hadn't been interested in Oklahoma at that time.
Now that's, that's a good answer, I guess.
Now, New York's known as a sports town. Were you a Yankees fan when you were living there?
No, I had given up sports, I think, by that time. When I was in Washington, the Washington Senators baseball was my team.
Oh.
I think somebody even took me to one of the games, if I remember clearly.
And the Great Depression, how did that affect you in any way, or do you remember? Do you recall anything from that period?
Mm, I think the only answer I can come up with there is that we didn't know any differently than being hard up.
Mm-hmm.
We always had food. We always had a roof over our heads, but nothing extraordinary, but minimal, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother at one time was working in Washington's biggest and finest department store, Woodward and Lothrop, and her job was repairing dolls. You probably don't repair them anymore. I don't know. Throw them away, buy a new one. And she worked with a lady who had 3 sons. One of them was kind of crippled, and he worked for the Washington Star newspaper. And she urged and pestered him till he finally gave me a job as an elevator operator. He was a starter for the elevators. So that put some money in our hands, not much, but the effect there was that I was making $18 a week. But when the NRA took over, National Recovery Administration, $13.50 is all you can make, see. So that was a cut. And let's see.
So that was before you were married?
Oh, yeah.
Before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a teenager.
Teenager.
In fact, I was supposed to be 16, but they squeezed me in a little before I reached 16.
Well, how would you get to work? On foot or?
Rode a streetcar,
Streetcar.
a little walk at each end.
NRA, I hadn't heard that in a long time.
Yeah.
That's-
Of course, after I was with IBM and the little time I worked in Washington, we had an unusual snow, and the streetcars couldn't operate because of snow covering the rails that couldn't make contact. So I walked all the way downtown then.
Simpler times in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, because you worked for IBM. How did IBM change while you were there? What were some of the things that you kind of went through during the time as IBM grew?
What I went through was just keep on working. When Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM. In fact, it wasn't IBM at first. It was International Time Recording Company. Was a very stern and busy man. And Tom Watson Jr. wanted to get into electronics. His father said, no, this is our thing. But eventually Junior prevailed, and that's when they got into computer work. I will say for Senior Tom, his wife was a very pleasant little lady, and we used to have frequent meetings back in those days, and most of it was they had people who made up songs praising Thomas J. Watson. and we could meet and sing all these songs to him. But his wife was just so nice. They'd have a receiving line at some of these events, and Senior would shake your hand and pull you and push you on away, get to the next one. And she'd hold you, stand there and talk so nicely. Just pleasant grandma.
Do you remember some of the songs or one of the songs?
Well, I could come up with a few words now and then, but not the whole song, no. Right now, I'd have to work to bring up any.
Well, what sort of things did you do for fun?
Oh, in IBM, we actually had a men's glee club of employees. And we would dress up in costumes and sing our songs at some of these meetings. We had fun there. And at one time, we had a bowling league too. And I was in that. One Thanksgiving, I won a turkey. And outside of IBM, at Radio City Music Hall, on Saturday matinee, you could go for $1 and have the stage show, the Rockettes, and the movie, and newsreel, and all those things. So we used to do that now and then.
For $1, that's pretty good too.
Well, $1 in those days,
Let's just, yeah.
it was quite a lot. Yeah.
Well, what fast forwarding to today, what's a typical day like for you? What time do you wake up, and what time do you go to bed? And what's a typical day? What do you do during the day?
Oh, now you mean?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, generally, I crawl out around 6:30. Occasionally sleep till 7. Sometimes I get up at 5 and do laundry, and always have straightening up and making the bed, such things. But on Monday mornings, we have Spanish Cove Singers practice. I'm in that. Tuesday morning, we have a devotion period with the administrator. Friday morning, there's coffee clutch. Usually we don't have anything scheduled on Saturday. And one of the exercise classes is stretch and strengthen, which I do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons. And yesterday, for instance, it's generally the last Tuesday of the month, there's a residents meeting, which I've been taking care of the audio equipment and moving chairs. And recently, within the past year, a younger man has sort of taken over the audio. In fact, he's into video too. I don't get in video. And he's also helping move chairs. And then Tuesday evening, we have the Board of Trustees after the residents meeting. every 2 months there's a potluck supper. I go to that sometimes.
What do you take?
I don't take anything except contribute to buying Colonel Sanders chicken.
That works.
Everything's contributed except the chicken.
I was just curious if you cooked.
Well, I can fry eggs.
That counts.
I break bread in the machine.
And what time do you usually go to bed on a typical day?
Generally around 10.
Okay.
That's my aim. Sometimes it's like a little early, occasionally a little later.
Do you do much reading?
Yep, I read. I'm a fairly good patron of our library. I don't go to public library. That requires transportation.
Right.
And then you have to take the books back by a schedule. Here, our library is on an honor system. You just go and pick out what you want and take it back. And a volunteer librarian reshelves it. So that's quite convenient.
And do you have a particular type of fiction, nonfiction type of book or type of things that you like to read?
Yeah, the primary one is Westerns with Louis L'Amour and Zane Grey. Every now and then I pick a mystery novel. I don't do much for nonfiction. I do it for entertainment.
And how do you keep up with current events?
Mostly from the newspaper, a little bit from TV, but there's too much crime. That's all you see on TV. So I usually watch the news around 5:30 and 6.
You mentioned you sing. Do you have a favorite song? Or what are you practicing these days?
Well, we're doing some Rodgers and Hart for the next time, and there's most always one religious number. And 3 or 4 times a day we give a concert here. We do it once over in the pavilion where the assisted living and nursing areas. We practice on them, then do it for the independent residents.
Would you mind singing something for us? Just a little something?
Yeah, I'd mind.
Okay. Shucks. I was hoping you'd go into You Are My Sunshine or something.
My voice don't work.
All right, we'll let you pass on that then.
Now, you said you had children. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like to be a father? And how often do you see him today, or see even?
Well, being a father has been fine. I think you'd class it as a normal situation. Today, we see the 2 boys from Texas, maybe 2 or 3 months. My daughter's in New Jersey, so that may be 3 or 4 years.
You have grandchildren? I assume.
Yep.
Any great grandchildren?
Yeah, great. In Florida. One of them was here for the birthday. One grandson, one son and the grandson were here.
And being 100 years of age, do you have any secrets to your longevity? What has contributed to your long life, do you think?
That's a big question.
You got to have a secret, right?
I want to be a little funny and say, when I was young living in New York, I ate a lot of chocolate.
Well, there is a connection.
I've eaten a lot of chocolate since then too, but I've had to go easy on that now because doctor found out I'm a pre-diabetic. So I'm supposed to watch the sugar.
So chocolate's your secret.
Yeah, but it has to be dark chocolate.
The dark chocolate.
I don't really like milk chocolate much.
Wow.
The darker the better.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, do you have any other idea what might have contributed to living longer?
Every now and then I think about that because people ask, like you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, God puts us here for some purpose that he wants us to accomplish. And I guess I haven't accomplished mine yet. So it's on God's timetable.
And do you have a philosophy you live by? Do you have a kind of a motto for life?
Well, we're back to that one day at a time.
Anything on your to-do list you haven't done yet that you would like to?
I would say that that's kind of faded. For a long time, it was, I'd like to go to New Zealand, but I'm not interested anymore because I wouldn't be able to enjoy it. In fact, I wouldn't even want to travel. I've been on some trips here at Spanish Cove. We have our own tour bus, and the activities girls are always making plans to go here and there. And one thing I enjoyed quite a lot with that was when we went to the Miller's Amish farm for lunch, and then one time to the Azalea Festival and the Art Museum. So there's kind of the highlights. They have mystery trips frequently. I had tried those, but I decided I wanted to know where it was going first, because a couple times where they went, I didn't really appreciate. The Spanish Coast Singers every year is treated to a luncheon in appreciation for our contribution. And I guess it was last year, my Superman shirt was given to me because they always gave us something at these luncheons. So I have to wear it now and then.
Now you said you do a lot of you do a lot of different moving chairs and setting things up, or are you known as one of the persons around here that does a lot of kind of the fixing of things? Or are you like Mr. Fix It?
Yep, I'm Mr. Fix It.
Yeah, yeah.
Fix things for the cove and fix things for other residents. And yesterday I just had a new request for Mr. Fix It over in the therapy room. They have one of the machines is an arm exerciser, which is falling apart. So I've promised to go see what I can do with fixing that up. I think I can.
Now, when history is said and done, what do you want to say about you?
I'm a minor part of it.
And what do you want others to remember you for? Or how do you want to be remembered?
As being a good guy. Well, being pleasant, being helpful. I don't look for stardom or anything like that. I'm in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was our final question. And if there's something you want to tell us before we sign off, anything we haven't asked that you'd like to get on the recording?
With all the questions you've asked.
There can't possibly be more.
I may think of something after you're gone.
All right. Well, we sure appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure.
Well, you're welcome.
Been a pleasure.
I'm enjoying it.